really good indication of what happens when the public and the police work together. And so I can't see anything more than that. The prosecutor will take it from here, but I am very confident, based upon the information I've seen, that the Detroit Police Department and all the people who work with them did get the right shooter. And the folks in that neighborhood don't have to worry about him today. And with that, I'll turn it back to our outstanding police chief.
Again, as the mayor indicated, it was remarkable that the special response team and the officers have responded, knowing that this person having shot 4 people, killed 3, they would have to engage him likely, and it could be a fatal situation. And we're very fortunate that that didn't happen. That's never the outcome that we desire as a police agency, and we were able to get through the circumstance without having to engage him. But they were on heightened alert, as you can imagine. But it's just a testament, again, to the high level of professional police officers we have in this city, and how fortunate and blessed we are to have an agency like we have. It should never be taken for granted. At this time, Coleman Young II will be coming up for comments.
Good afternoon, everyone. I just wanted to come up here to just say what a great job by our Detroit Police Department. We have to do something about the issue of guns in our community, about the issue of violence in our community. But I think that, this is just another example of the police department, the ATF, the Michigan State Police, putting their lives on the line, putting themselves in danger, and redefining what the definition of hero means, because they are willing to sacrifice themselves, not just for those who they do know, but for those who don't. And so the city is eternally grateful. And as a city councilman who represents the entire city at large, I think I can easily and safely say that we are thankful to DPD for what they've done for us, and we thank you for keeping them safe. We're glad we're able to keep them off the street. And once we get back to work at City Council, we are willing to work with the mayor. I want to thank the mayor as well for his leadership on what we could do to stop gun violence in this city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Young. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank the mayor as well for his commitment to this department, the authorization of the additional funding that we needed. And as he indicated, our officers, they would have stepped up without the funding, but it certainly made it easier and feels good to be able to pay him a little bit more. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. At this time, Councilwoman Waters will come up for a couple words.
Thank you so much, Chief White. And I just want to thank DPD and all of law enforcement for acting so quickly on this issue. Thank you, Mayor Duggan, for your leadership as well. I just want to say one thing. I just want to ask the people in the community, when you see an active shooter, please report them right away. You see, the police can act much faster when they know. So it is incumbent upon all of us throughout this city to report those things that we see. Family members, if you know that you have someone in your family that is mentally ill, please make sure that the police department knows that. Especially if you see them leave the house with the gun, walking around with the gun, it is very important that you do that. And so I stand ready today to work with DPD and the mayor's office to make sure that this doesn't happen again in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Waters. At this time, I'm going to have Commander McGinnis, whose team led this investigation, to just level set and give you a quick overview of the circumstances. Commander McGinnis.
Thank you, Chief. I'd like to break down a timeline of the events from the 4 incidents yesterday. The first incident occurred at 4:45 a.m., and that was in the area of 7 Mile in Wyoming. In that incident, we have a male victim who was 28 years old when he was approached by the assailant, and unprovoked, the assailant fired shots, striking the victim. The assailant walked away and then came back and fired more shots into the victim. and unfortunately, the victim was deceased from those gunshot wounds. There was no 911 call for that incident. About 30 minutes later, about 3 blocks away, that's the first time that the police were notified of an incident. And there was shots fired in the 911 call. Police responded and they found a woman who's a Jane Doe at this point. We're still working to identify her. So if anyone in the public happens to know of a Black female in her 40s from the Margarita and Wyoming area that they haven't seen since yesterday, we'd ask that they please contact us so that we can try to identify our victim. She was found on the sidewalk suffering from gunshot wounds after a neighbor called 911. It was while at that scene that a neighbor had walked by that scene and went up to 7 Mile in Wyoming and observed the first victim, and then came back to the scene and notified police that he believed that there was another fatal victim a few blocks north. So while they were conducting an investigation on those 2 scenes, the officers heard shots fired to the east of them. And we believe that those shots were in the area of 19800 Livernois, or the 19,800 block of Livernois. And that's where our 3rd fatal victim was fatally shot. And in that incident, we have a female who was also in her 40s, who was waiting for a bus when the assailant walked by her and then, with no provocation, turned around and fired multiple shots into her. He then stepped away and then came back and fired more rounds into her. The assailant fled on foot. There was a 911 call for that incident, as well as officers responding from the regular radio broadcast. The assailant went from there to the 19,200 block of Pennington. It's just a few blocks away from the Livernois location. And that was at 7:10 a.m. when he encountered a neighbor who was walking his dog, an 80-year-old male. And again, unprovoked, the assailant just shot at the victim and struck him and his dog. Fortunately, the victim was shot in the leg, and by quick action from the neighbors, they applied a tourniquet and got him to a hospital, and he survived. So we have 4 incidents, with the first one being at 4:45 and the last one being about 7:10 a.m. The officers that were doing the scene investigation recognized 1, based on the proximity of the incidents, 2, based on the timing, and then 3, the most critical piece of evidence is all of these incidents had 9mm casings. So at that time, we activated our NIBIN team. All the casings were taken to our NIBIN office and compared for ballistics. And it was then determined that all those casings were fired from the same firearm. So then we knew what we had. Several hours later, after the broadcast of the images of the subject, we received a tip on who the subject was. That, along with other information, allowed us to secure a search warrant. And during that search warrant, we were able to safely take the suspect into custody without incident. While searching for firearms, we were able to recover a 9mm firearm from that property. And we immediately had that firearm test fired, and those casings compared to the results from the other casings in the case. And that firearm is, in fact, the firearm used in all 4 of these shootings. So, thank you.
In a moment, we're going to hear from our federal partners, but I do want the community to understand how imperative it was to use our technology. When I got the call last night from the team who had put in hours getting up search warrants and getting that weapon recovered, and by activating our NIBIN team, test firing that gun yesterday without delay and connecting that gun to all those shootings, we were confident at that point that our community was safer. We had the weapon, we had our suspect. Very important how technology plays a part in keeping all of us safe. At this time, I'd like to bring up the FBI just to say a couple words, if you don't mind. I mean to put you on the spot, but I think it's important for the community to understand this work that goes on behind the scenes. We are committed to keeping our community safe, And it is those relationships that got us to where we are. Without hesitation, they were activated and on the ground, and we couldn't be more grateful. Jim?
Thanks, Chief. And first of all, I want to thank the Chief for his leadership. Chief White never hesitates to pick up the phone and call partners, state, local, federal in this case, and ask for the resources he needs for his folks to get their job done. So this is a collaboration. And again, the Chief, we have each other on speed dial as he does with all the partners. He does not hesitate to pick that phone up and ask for the help they need. It is a law enforcement community. We do support one another. The FBI supports DPD and all our state and local partners, federal partners, and they support us as well. So there's also a partnership with the community, and the community of Detroit is amazing. I've met so many community partners, community leaders through our community outreach engagement. There's no more important priority to the FBI than safeguarding the public, the community. So in this case, a quick reaction by the Chief, his folks, the state, federal, and local partners to come out. It was a priority, as mentioned by the mayor. It was a Sunday, but we are always on the clock. We're always ready to come out to protect and serve the public. It moved quick. It was a combination of advanced techniques, some your typical basic investigations. Our Violent Crimes Task Force came out. And again, the FBI Violent Crimes Task Force is a great example of the FBI with other agencies within a task force environment, not only serving the FBI's mission, but all the law enforcement mission. So in this case, our Violent Crimes Task Force came out, joined all our partners, and resolved this investigation. So it's another tragedy. It really is. It's a true tragedy. It impacts the public, not in a good way. My heart goes out, the FBI's heart, and of course, all the partners, everybody standing here, our hearts go out to the communities. Thank you to the communities, to our partners out there. It is our most important partnership. Without the community, we can't do our job, and we can't safeguard the public like we should. So thank you for that. We'll continue the partnerships, the engagements, the collaboration with all law enforcement and communities, and we'll just keep accomplishing our mission. So thank you, Chief, once again.
Thank you very much, Jim. Before we take any questions, we do a lot of work in the community with ceasefire, and certainly it's a very important component. As we've said many times, we're not going to arrest ourselves out of crime. I mean, there's never been a declaration from any police chief in the country that they've arrested the last criminal. And so we don't suspect that we will ever do that either. However, we want to disrupt opportunities to commit crime by providing resources. And one of the most powerful components that we have is ceasefire. That's a piece, a tool, but it's not a replacement for enforcement and arrests and getting violent offenders off the street, which we're going to continue to be committed to and not change our position on that at all. But I think it's a great opportunity for ceasefire to come up. Bishop Harrison, say a couple words.
Thank you, Chief. Yesterday morning, before we began our morning worship at our church, it was amazing to see that as I reported out to the congregation that there was an active shooter, many of our members were distraught as they ran out of the sanctuary to try to call their loved ones and their families in that area to kind of warn them what was going on. And you could just feel the panic. There was another community event that took place on yesterday that I was called to be a speaker right in the area. And I had to inform them that there was an active shooter in the area, and to see the panic on people's faces as they begin to grab their children and begin to go away from the event. A balloon release yesterday that I attended to assist another family that's trying to deal with the tragedy of losing their child to gun violence had to be disrupted because this incident had not yet been placed under wraps with catching the assailant at that time. Just the needless kind of pain that we go through when persons make a decision to commit this kind of violence. It disrupts our entire community. I am grateful, however, that DPD was able to move in and do what they always do best. I'm also grateful for the community and the residents who took the time out of their busy schedules on a Sunday when they should have been worshiping and spending time with family to get out here in the streets and try to find out information to report to DPD, to help them along the way. I don't want to talk to them though. I want to talk to those of you who maybe have access to weaponry and can cause this kind of harm. And we don't know the details of why he did what he did. But I can tell you, obviously, there was something he was trying to work out. I'd much rather you go and talk to someone if you're having these kinds of problems than to pick up a weapon and go and do this kind of harm to others. We have 3 families in the community that are now without the experience of joy with their loved ones because someone made a decision to handle whatever they were going through in the way of violence and carrying it out on someone else. Look, if you need someone to talk to, if you're going through some things and you're trying to work some things out, you can contact Ceasefire on our social media pages. Get in touch with a grassroots organization, your neighbor, talk to someone, find a pastor, a rabbi, do something. Just please stop hurting our communities because it's a detriment to all of us. We do care about you. And that's why we do the things that we do and try to provide all the services and resources that we can. But I need you, when you're going through something, to make a decision to not harm other people. Find someone to talk to, another way to work it through. And I promise we'll be there because Detroit is resilient in that way. Thank you.
I think this is a perfect time to say, before we take questions, if someone uses a weapon in our community, we're going to use every resource that we have to lock you up. And we make no apologies about that. If you carry an illegal weapon, you use a weapon, that is not a threat. That's a commitment that we're going to use every resource, ATF, FBI, NIBIN, good old-fashioned police work to lock you up. Enough is enough. This is unacceptable, and it needs to stop. And with that, we'll take any questions.
Ryan Marshall over at News Radio 950. I know this was a random act, but was there any, in your initial investigation, any sort of motive, a job loss, a breakup with a girlfriend, an argument? Was there some instance that you feel like there was a reason why he was out here doing these things?
We're still early in the investigation. I don't have that level of detail, but there's nothing that should motivate you to do something this tragic. Access to a weapon is what we know, easy access to a weapon. And we have some information we haven't been able to confirm yet, but perhaps he was dealing with some mental illness. But that's all we have right now. The detectives have a little bit more that they're going to be turning over to the prosecutor, but my level of briefing is what I've just gave you.
Chief, to add to that question there, is it possible someone else could potentially face charges for providing him with that weapon?
At this point, that part of the investigation is still being evaluated, and I don't have that answer. It's a possibility, sure, but I can't confirm that right now.
Hi, my question is how you handled getting this information out to the community, and do we have some kind of texting system in the city, or should we, or how are we making sure that families and residents, if something like an active shooter happens, that they get the information that they need to be safe?
Yes, we have through Homeland Security, we have a product called Code Red, and what we were able to do was stand that up in an area where we believed him to be, where we could send text blasts out to phones. Once our real-time crime center pulled the information together and we knew we had a pattern, we stood up a news conference and we briefed out quickly and we put it out on our social media. But no, everything worked the way that we wanted it to, and we'll be evaluating in our after action what we could do better. We can always do better.
Hi, Chief. As far as sometimes with these random shootings, there's social media posts or some sort of traffic ahead of time. Was there anything like that with this one?
No, we looked at that and we haven't found anything. When we talk about getting the message out, the very basic level of getting the message out is calling 911. And what was most troubling for me when we looked at all of this is that first 911 call didn't come in. And when you look at that first 911 call, had it come in, we have to ask ourselves, will we have been there earlier and been able to prevent another homicide? You know, what we don't want to happen is gunshots to become commonplace in our community. We don't want to become desensitized to someone shooting in our community. There should never be a condition ever that someone uses a gun in our community that's unaccounted for, right? I mean, even the police, if we pull our trigger, that should cause something to occur. Whether you call the police on the police or whether you call, but every time you hear a gunshot, you know, we must call the police and get that activation out.
And I think McGinnis mentioned someone close to the suspect was the one who sort of reached out to help you all.
Yes, yes, we've received a number of tips, and one of those tips was someone close to the suspect.
And how important is that for those closest to these folks to step up?
It's important for everyone to step up when you have something such as this. You know, we're happy that someone in the family or someone close to the suspect, more specifically, made the phone call. But we got a number of calls, and again, I can't say enough the importance of calling 911 when something unusual happens. It's just that important.
Sure. And in regards to that tip, did that happen once the department was able to kind of release that still image that I think that we saw Sunday? Is that what kind of led to this tip, or was this just a general call?
That was a general call once we put the information out. Excuse me. But the still helped. Mayor, did you want to?
Hi, Chief White. I just have a couple quick questions. Is it possible that the suspected gunman killed more than the people that you have listed?
Well, as I indicated, we've got an extremely active investigation, and you know, our detectives are looking at everything. They're backtracking. You know, what the suspect did that day, what he did past 48, 72 hours. They're going to leave nothing unresolved. Trust me. They work very hard, and they're gonna touch everything that they can. And they're gonna look at everything he touched, and they're gonna track his actions. They're gonna try to identify the moment he took possession of that weapon in the first homicide that he committed.
Yeah. And can you tell me a little bit more about the suspect's background? Does he have prior convictions? Was he in school? Is he from Detroit?
Very high level, as I indicated earlier. I can't get into too much detail. The prosecutor has a whole lot of work to do on this case, and I don't want to compromise that by talking too much. I will tell you that it's a 19-year-old, and we don't see any criminal history at this time. And we have some indication that there is mental illness.
Thank you.
Chief or Commander, could you talk about the arrest itself? Was he in the basement? Was he hiding? What happened?
SRT.
Yeah, our SRT team was activated. They were already at the command post during this entire operation. Once we received the information on his location and the search warrant was secured, they made the house, and they did what's called a call out. They made contact from outside the house to the people inside the house and had everybody exit and safely took them into custody. Yeah, I'll have to get that for you. I don't remember the exact time.
Chief, a lot of times these shootings are the result of disputes. How often is it that your department is handling these completely random shooting like this one?
This is unusual. I mean, we've had a little bit of everything, but this was unusual. And again, you know, we train for these things. You know, we look at our ready op systems. We look at our special response teams, our command posts and deployment of command posts, our partnerships, MSP and their helicopter being able to help us when we took, you know, half the city with our DPD helicopter. They took the other half with the MSP helicopter and then switched sides looking for this person. Our technology, our technology helps us. And, you know, it's time we get off the fence on crime. I mean, we need to work together. We need to make the proposition of committing a crime in our community risky for the perpetrator. And that's how it all comes together. And so yesterday, we're proud that it came together. We wish we were here for a different reason and not something so tragic. But we're not caught off guard. But we were certainly locked in on this case and very concerned about his movements. And then some of the tools that I continue to ask the mayor for to help the officers do their job is important because as it was brought up earlier about communication tools and providing blasts to community members with Ready Op and other things like that, it's equally important to have other tools for the department to do their job. Mr. Mayor, do you want to add anything?
So the chief is trying to be politically correct, but every single detective who came yesterday to the command center and looked at this said the same thing. If we had had ShotSpotter, there's an excellent chance we would have arrested him by 5 in the morning. The most troubling thing about this is the first man was murdered at 4:45 a.m. at the corner of 7 in Wyoming. The shooter shot twice, walked away, shot 2 more times. Now, at 4:45 on a Sunday morning, not a lot of people are up. Some people might have thought they were hearing firecrackers. The people in the gas station, where we actually ended up pulling the video from to see the shooting, hadn't heard it. But we got no 911 call. More than a half hour later, that shooter murdered his second victim 3 blocks away. And so we'll see what the facts show, but I think there's a strong probability that after shooting the first person, he expected to get caught. And so imagine this, at 5 in the morning on a Sunday, you've got a shooter walking up and down Wyoming with a gun and nobody shows up. And then 35 minutes later, he shoots and kills a second individual and then proceeds from there. The Detroit police officers are doing their job. They're out there every day. If we keep doing the same thing over and over, you can't expect different results. And I'm not saying there's one solution. We have to do a lot of things. We got to get the courts to catch up on the dockets. We got to get the tethers to actually mean something. We've got to get assistance to the prosecutor to move cases. We got to get assistance to the parole department. The whole system, court system in America, got backed up. But think about this. Had the Detroit Police Department had a ShotSpotter notice at 4:45 on a Sunday morning, a mile and a half from the 12th precinct, police officers would have been on that site immediately at a time where the police had the advantage knowing they were going in to a gunfire situation. As the day went on, it appears this individual got more confident and ultimately successfully hid for several hours. And we've seen this across the city. And part of us is angry. There are an element of defund the police group that intentionally put out false information. ShotSpotter has no surveillance. ShotSpotter has no cameras. All ShotSpotter does is say, this is the location of a gunfire with precision, so the police can respond immediately. And I know from the time I spent with the officers yesterday, they're going to be haunted for a long time. They very likely could have prevented 2 and probably 3 tragedies had they had an immediate notice. And so the chief has been asking, and the officers have been asking for this kind of technology support. We also need support from the court system and the rest of law enforcement. And the chief and I will be redoubling all of those efforts in the days to come.
All set. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for your leadership.
Thank you, man.